So we will finish the morning part of the summit with the launch of the Brain Capital Index for Europe. Brain Capital Index work has been led by Rym Ayadi at the Euro-Mediterranean Economists Association. She's co-founder of the Brain Capital Alliance, and she will now present brand new and fresh data about brain capital in Europe. So Brain Capital Index for Europe. Rym.
First, good morning, everybody. Thank you, Pavel. I don't see him. Yes, here he is. Thank you for this great event and organization, and I'm very happy to see friends also in this event. I'm putting myself 15 minutes, as you mentioned to me, on my timer, so I don't go beyond. And of course, this work has been a collaborative work between economists and neuroscientists and other disciplines to allow us really to reach a common understanding of what is brain capital. So today I would really like to share with you that this concept is becoming really central on how we understand economic performance and societal resilience. Brain capital is, and we would like to make it as economic concept as possible, and it goes beyond, in fact, the human capital concept. So at our institution, the Euro-Mediterranean Economists Association, we have developed the Brain Capital Dashboard and Index. Since 5 years, we've been tracking a number of indicators, including the indicators presented at the EMEA, but also the World Health Organization and OECD and other institutions that are providing data which are publicly accessible and that can be easily comparable globally. And this is to better measure and understand the concept within different regions. Of course, our index is global. It's not specific to a certain region or country. So we had to use the common denominator of what we put within our index. So again, countries that have more data that they can input into the Brain Capital Index, that would be very good. And we are trying now to test the case of the US and Canada, where they have much more information. So, in fact, the work that we did for European Union is clearly interesting because, again, it's a common lowest denominator. So I'm sure Europe has much more data that we can explore, and we will do it. And based on the minimum information that we have collected within the Brain Capital Index globally, we could see clearly that Europe does not have a capacity problem, but rather a conversion problem, and I will explain it in this slide. So what is brain capital? As you see in the previous slide, here you go. That's two pillars mainly, brain health and brain skills, and then we assessed all the drivers that are essential, in fact, within the construction, because obviously these are all drivers that allow either brain capital deterioration or enhancement. And this is all, of course, the brain capital is a construct. Again, we're trying to make it as an economic construct, and it can be developed over time, and we can include further information in there. So, as you can see in this slide, the construction is pretty simple. And then together, these three pillars, they interact for productivity, innovation, and economic resilience. And it becomes a measure. So something that has not been measured before, we are able to measure it. Of course, it's not perfect. These are not, I would say, perfect measures. We need to always remain, I would say, critical. This is not meant to be ordering countries or it's a benchmark and it's a policy compass which will allow us really to understand what we can do to improve the situation. So in reality, if you look at the Brain Capital Brain Health Index, we looked at a very reduced definition, which is the absence of disorder. What is brain health, what is mental health is something that we can debate for hours, and we've been debating for years, 5 years, and we don't have an answer to it. But then up to now, what we have said to have an agreement is the absence of disorder. So it means that we can criticize this approach. I always criticize this approach because it's not only the absence of disorder, but then at least we capture what I call the version 1 of the index, which is absence of disorder through the brain capital, brain health index, but the brain skills, it's important because that goes beyond the human capital index, and this is very important also in what comes next, because as you can see here, our approach is really transformative. We move from a human capital approach, which we used in economics for years, into a brain capital approach, which is much more purpose-focused, adaptable, also treating health from a peripheral and residual cost into an asset, and also into a core infrastructure in our society and our economy. And we make our economic models much more human through this concept. And then skills, not only skills for labor market purposes, but also for neurocognitive purposes. And these will become assets over time that goes beyond the labor market. And this is what we want to achieve. But we are there in this ambition, in this vision, and trying to accommodate as much data as possible. But then we cannot create data. We are not data creators. We are data users. And what we want to do is really to have a call to all of you to give us high quality data so we can include in this type of measures everything that we can include that can make sense. And of course, we go from an individual investment that everybody does into a system design, a system change, which Susan has been talking about. And this is important that all players are part of this system design. And of course, we move from a vision of a growth only to resilience. And this is the idea of what we want to achieve in this process. Now, let me now dig into European Union, and I will go fast here. So, European Union is facing major structural trends nowadays, being the aging populations, which increasing, in fact, cognitive and neurological risk that can be preventable, yes. So the opportunity to prevent and to early diagnose, it's very important also going forward. And also, there is weak productivity growth since 2015, and there is, in fact, a stagnation that we've been seeing over the years. But also, we have very strong institutions here in Brussels and elsewhere, but weak translation into outcomes. We need to understand why this is the case. But also, unfortunately, there are rising socioeconomic complexities stemming from the geo-economic fragmentation that we are living in, and this adds to the paradox. So, in fact, Europe is very highly developed, yet increasingly constrained in terms of performance. So, if we look at the evolution now, you will see a number of lines over here, but I don't want you to, in fact, see each one of them, but what we can see clearly, there is a declining trend in brain capital index. Phase 1 was from the 1990s to 2010. From there, we had some sort of balanced growth between brain health, brain skills, and enabling systems. In phase 2, which is from 2010, after the financial crisis, clearly brain skills continue to rise because of the digital evolution and all of the education that has happened through, in fact, the human capital index, which we measured, and then we act upon it over the years. And this is very important. But also, we see that brain health clearly declined over the years. And this has created the system balance. At the same time, you can see here, brain health index, you have slightly reduced a trend, and brain skills index has increased but remained extremely volatile. But also, we have to keep in mind that the indicators we are using also, they are constraining us from really having a great view on all of this. And interestingly enough, the brain capital enablers, which are the infrastructure, remained totally stable, and this is very good news, but we want it even to improve over time because we are investing in our enabling environments and we have to continue investing in it. So this is what we call the structural paradox in Europe: high investment in education, health, innovation and social system, but yet declining mental health and stagnating overall in terms of the outcomes. And this is what we we don't want for European Union. So here, if we look at the next step, I mean, we are facing a mental or brain, health crisis. Why is this? Mental health costs, we heard it. There are huge costs for it of trillions. Of course, in the European Union, we're talking about hundreds of billions, and the estimations are underestimated, and I'll be sure of it. So, of course, since we don't see it, we don't see the full picture, so I assume that the costs are much, much higher. A lot of people are affected, particularly after COVID, and we don't know the implications of this disease. But also we see and we observed in many countries youth mental health has worsened significantly, also after COVID because of the isolation. And all of this is paying now the negative outcomes. And obviously aging is an amplifying factor, but health is no longer just a social issue. It will become, and I think it's becoming, a macroeconomic issue. So skills have progressed, and I mentioned it is not enough. Educational attainment is rising, and this is great news. But 56%, based on certain surveys, of Europeans still lack basic digital skills. For example, learning disruptions post-COVID has impacted and has persisted, and skills are increasingly underutilized and unstable. So we have a problem, in fact, of capacity and utilization. And this is also nowadays with artificial intelligence, how do we interact and how our skills have been interacting with artificial intelligence, and this is also unknown yet. So even where we invested successfully, we are not capturing the full value, and some of the value, we just don't know what would be the impact of artificial intelligence over the years. And this is why I mentioned this execution gap. This leads us to this concept, which we want to really investigate further. In fact, there is a potential where people are capable of, but there is a performance what we don't really deliver. And here, what we call the gap. And we need to really reduce this gap as much as possible. And what explains this gap, and this is an intuition, and we are going to investigate it further. For example, using the brain capital lens, stress, fatigue, cognitive overload, mental health constraints, and workplace pressures. So we need to adapt our labor market into this aspect, and and the brain health becomes an endogenous factor to it, not something that is residual that we just pay whenever it occurs. In other words, we are not lacking the talent, we are not lacking the capacities, we just need to increase this connection between brain health and brain skills together, because it's not one or another one, they are all both interacting, and in fact we just need to enable them through the enabling systems that we are developing. I have 2 minutes left and I will go faster. So this is okay. So this is interesting now. What are the productivity implications to all of this? Now, it has direct, all of what I've been saying has direct implications on productivity. So, of course, productivity, there has been a strong growth before 2008. The financial crisis came, a shock. And then after the financial crisis, of course, the COVID, another shock, and now the Ukraine war, and then more geopolitical constraints. So, conflict. So there is a persistent slowdown afterward, and these are stagnations. And despite better education, of course, productivity gains have remained extremely weak. And this is, in fact, because of the cognitive performance that became binding constraints, we must explain it and we must act upon it. And you can see here in the correlation, this is simply correlation, but I can tell you that I did the causality, and there is a significant effect on labor productivity and brain health index. And this is very interesting to see that nowadays we need to take this into consideration and do more research that shows this interaction between productivity and brain health and brain capital. Now, the country patterns, in fact, also matter. Countries like, we took Spain, France, the systems are relatively balanced there, so something they are doing correctly, we need to study it. They need to build their brain capital indexes and to see what really they are doing correctly over the time. Germany, strong skills, but weak brain health, so we need to see why this declining trend. Italy and Belgium, structural stagnation, clearly, so we need to also understand those countries. And Poland, catching up on skills, but enablers still lag. And this tells us one thing. We don't have a one-size-fits-all approach. Europe, EU, yeah, that's fine. My time is off. And then what is important is to have one specific solution, different solutions for different countries, so we need to understand those very carefully. So these are the structural drivers. What driving imbalances, as I mentioned before, these are the mental health deterioration, demographic aging, digitalization, psychosocial stress, economic shocks, and this is clearly since the financial crisis that we may have recovered financially, but that we did not recover as population mentally. And of course, weak conversion of skills into productivity. And these are systemic shocks. They are not temporary shocks, and we need to act upon them. Finally, we need to have a structural shift from a skill-focused model to a balanced brain capital model, and then to treat brain health as an economic, in fact, infrastructure. And this is essential, and we have to do it extremely fast. So these are some policy priorities, and you can read them here. And thank you very much for your attention, and I'll stop here because I have 1 minute more. So sorry.